for free.
Yeah.
And has been the ruling class her whole life.
Yeah.
And she's still lecturing you about how she's a victim of racism. Hillary Clinton, exact same thing. Goes to Wellesley, spends her entire life in the ruling class, and she's still whining about how she's discriminated against. Why are they doing that?
Yeah. And did you ever see, they'll have like pictures of side by side, but it'll be like pictures of like Jimmy Carter's house and Obama's house.
Exactly.
And it totally represents something about the like corroding of our soul.
In a white neighborhood, you should be required to live in the hood if you're Barack Obama. And
if you're using that card.
You use that card. The only reason you got elected was because of your race. You spent your entire 8 years inflaming race hate in our country, and then you go to Martha's Vineyard, the whitest zip code in the world? Not allowed.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that.
Wait, what did he just say? You could practically hear the silence in the room after this one. A high-profile insider just tore apart the carefully crafted narrative that the elites have been feeding the public for years. And let's just say, it wasn't pretty. From secret financial back channels to massive wealth accumulation, this revelation laid everything bare, leaving even seasoned experts stunned. But honestly, are we even surprised anymore? The hypocrisy is just too big to ignore. Before we dive into these mind-blowing truths, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories they don't want you to hear. Did you subscribe? Awesome. Now let's get into it. The money trail that no one talks about. All right, let's start with a number that might make your jaw drop, because this isn't just about political influence. It's about how power works behind the scenes. When public figure first stepped into the political spotlight, their net worth was a modest X million dollars. Nothing crazy, right? Fast forward a few years and suddenly they're sitting on a fortune of X $100 million or more. And of course, we're all supposed to believe that this massive jump in wealth came solely from book deals and speaking fees, because it's not like there's a well-oiled machine of influence, favors, and financial back channels working behind the scenes, right? Yeah, sure. But let's not stop there, because this isn't just one person, it's a massive multi-billion-dollar game, and only the elites get to play. Tucker Carlson's guest broke it all down, exposing how identity politics, fake activism, and media control have become some of the most lucrative businesses in modern history. And guess who's cashing in the most? The very people who pretend to be fighting for justice and equality. The hypocrisy that's too big to ignore. And here's where things get downright absurd. The same people who constantly lecture America about privilege, oppression, and inequality are the ones buying multi-million-dollar mansions in exclusive neighborhoods.
Barack Obama's campaign in 2008, first of all, it was just leaving how you feel about the guy aside, it was an amazing campaign. It was unlike anything that had ever been run before.
It was genius.
Yes, it was totally brilliant. It was now, of course, it wasn't what they presented it as. It wasn't like a grassroots campaign. It was...
Let's sort of like elect the black guy and get past the race stuff. I loved that.
Well, especially because that was his message.
That was his message.
And let's get past the race stuff.
I love that.
He goes, then I think essentially what happened, and it was around Obama's re-election campaign, this is where things really went off the rails in this country, was that he got in there and continued and expanded all the worst of the Bush policies.
Oh, of course.
And so they almost had nothing to run on, and so they decided to pivot to a culture war instead.
Let's talk about real estate for a second. These so-called champions of the people have been buying $10+ million beachfront estates while warning everyone about rising sea levels, living in gated communities while telling average Americans that walls don't work, flying private jets to climate summits while telling you to give up your car. See the pattern yet? They tell you to sacrifice, to pay your fair share, to stop hoarding wealth.
Many of us still live in fear as we go to the grocery store or worry about walking our dogs or allowing our children to get a license. I mean, just imagine.
Aren't your girls driving?
They're driving.
Yeah.
But every time they get in a car by themselves, I worry about what assumption is being made by somebody who doesn't know everything about them. The fact that they are good students and polite girls, but maybe they're playing their music a little loud. Maybe somebody sees the back of their head and makes an assumption. I, like so many parents of black kids, have to, that the innocent act of getting a license puts fear in our hearts.
While they move their money through tax havens, shell companies, and charitable foundations that somehow never seem to actually solve anything. And here's the kicker. These same elites love to talk about struggle and oppression. But last time I checked, oppressed people don't live in $20 million penthouses. The real numbers they don't want you to see. Now let's talk hard numbers, because this is where things get really interesting. Barack Obama charges $400,000+ per speech. Michelle Obama, up to $700,000 per event. The Clintons, over $230 million from post office speaking fees alone. But here's the real question. What exactly are they saying in these speeches that's worth that much money? Oh, right. They're not being paid for their speeches. They're being paid for their influence. It's a pay-to-play system. And guess what? Regular Americans aren't invited. And if you think this is just about giving speeches, think again. The real money isn't in talking, it's in book deals worth tens of millions of dollars signed immediately after leaving office. Media partnerships that ensure their narrative is the only one you hear. Charitable foundations that rake in hundreds of millions, yet somehow nothing ever changes. Take a look at the numbers. The Obamas signed a $65 million book deal right after leaving the White House. The Bidens made $16 million in just 2 years after stepping down. The Clintons Foundation became a $230 million cash machine. And what do they all have in common? They use their platforms, influence, and media control to push division and identity politics, because that's what keeps the money flowing.
I notice a theme here. There are a lot of extremely rich people who are deeply miserable and desperate to have you believe they're victims. What is that?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, LeBron James living in Bel Air, he's a victim. Meghan Markle went downgraded from billionaire to multimillionaire. She's a victim. They want you to know that they're all victims. It's because they're trying to distract us. The truth is that they view us as peasants. They're trying to make it seem like, hey, when the peasants turn against us because they're actually robbing all of them, we don't want them to look at us. We want to make them think that we're one of us. They're not one of us. They're nothing like us. They don't live like us. She has nothing that goes on in her life that is similar to the average American, yet she keeps trying to use her skin color and her complexion as a way to make people believe that she's suffering, and she's absolutely not suffering. Everyone should be aware that if you're watching this and you think that LeBron James and Meghan Markle and Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are oppressed, you are a fool. You have been fooled. They are doing just fine.
The ultimate power play. But here's where it gets even worse. The same people who talk about equity and justice are benefiting the most from corrupt financial loopholes they claim to oppose. They cry about corporate greed, yet they are the corporations. They tell Americans to pay their fair share, yet they hide their wealth in offshore accounts. They scream about climate change, yet they fly private jets to their private islands. And the media, they'll never call this out, because they're part of the machine. At the end of the day, this isn't about race, oppression, or fighting for the little guy. It's about money, power, and control. And now, people are finally waking up to it. So, what happens next? Tucker Carlson's guest just laid it all out for the world to see. So the real question is, will people finally wake up to this? Or will the media continue to run cover for these elites while demonizing anyone who dares to call them out? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe, because your support means everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.